Ryan Devlin is a marvelous tenor player that I've gotten to know over the past few years. He's up and coming on the modern jazz post-bebop scene, and he's just a really exciting player to listen to for anybody serious about the art of improvisation. He recently graduated from the New England Conservatory, studying under the great legendary saxophonist Jerry Bergonzi. While there, he got to study with drummer Billy Hart. We talk a bit about this in the interview as for one of his references for what he was working on at the time of the interview. He's recorded 3 studio albums, one of which I actually had the privilege to be on, called Series of Circumstances, featuring the great Gene Perla on bass and Adam Nussbaum on drums. We also talked about his early experiences as a classical saxophonist and how he used that skill set early on in his development as an improviser. Shout out to his father, Scott Devlin, who is also an amazing saxophonist and teacher. Aside from all his great accomplishments as a player, Ryan also started his own coffee blend that you can check out on his website at ryandevlin.com, as well as see what his touring schedule is so you can check him out playing in a town near you. Enough for me, though. A lot of great knowledge and insight in this interview. Let's have a listen to what Ryan has to say. Ryan Devlin, thanks for being on this interview series. You're the cat. Love your playing, as one could imagine. We've gotten to do some playing together and been a long time admirer. Thanks for agreeing to do this. So we got some questions for you.
Thanks for having me. Ditto on all the same stuff. It was so much fun to be on the road and hopefully to do more of that in this coming year and the years to come. And I've also been a huge fan of your playing, man. I would not be the player I am without you and your videos and everything. So the feeling is mutual.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
The first question, what was your first major light bulb moment, if you would call it that, with improvisation? What was the first time you remember realizing that improvising is really, really fun? And how did that lead to your decision to become a professional musician?
That's good. I think I was always a big fan of the saxophone because my dad played saxophone. So when I got started in on it, I think my dad kind of had me lightly improvise on things without even really telling me what it was, when I was young. And I was really into classical saxophone, just trying to play a bunch of classical concertos and etudes. I'm talking about when I was in middle school and even a little bit before that.
We don't hear those words said out loud very often. I was really into classical saxophone. I was the same way too, coming up. It's interesting.
Yeah, it almost felt like a game to me in a way, almost like a Guitar Hero type of thing. And it's I was just always trying to get the rhythms and notes right and as fast as physically possible was always my goal. And I was always trying to be better than my dad. So I would take lessons with him, a couple times a week or whatever. We would just kind of sit down and play. And I was really into Maceo Parker when I was younger in middle school. I love funk stuff. My dad was a big funk head, and Maceo and James Brown was always playing. Tower Power, that stuff. So I think I would just kind of randomly sort of start improvising with a blues scale, in middle school and stuff like that. And I think the big light bulb went off when I was put in jazz band when I was in, I think 6th grade. I was playing Barry or whatever. And I noticed that my mind went off because I could play a bunch of this fast stuff that I was practicing in classical, not knowing even what it was. And people reacted to it. They were like, "Oh, wow," and I think that just gave me the confidence to just say, "Screw this! I'm just gonna play." Whatever comes out, kind of comes out. And listening to Maceo and Tower of Power and stuff, I was just always trying to play along with them and just kind of mess around and stuff like that. And so that gave me a lot of confidence. And then I think the light bulb went off probably around for jazz at least. I think I always wanted to be a professional, some kind of saxophone player, even middle school, because I just loved playing it. But as far as jazz go, I think it was around 10th grade. When I started playing tenor more often, I was really, starting to just listen to more Coltrane and that stuff. And then my dad showed me the Brecker Brothers, which was a really great, this is 10th grade, really great crossover of tenor sax and the Tower Power, funky James Brown stuff that I was already into. And I heard Michael Brecker play and I was just immediately obsessed and was like, I got to spend my whole life just working on just this. So
yeah, man. Oh, that's great. I love that you make the connection between using the classical stuff you're practicing in a jazz band setting, because that would totally work. It has to be done with, good time, or like sort of in the style of what you're playing in. But that's something I would have never done, or maybe I would have done but not been able to pull it off because I didn't have the stylistic stuff, or hadn't had that sound in my head yet. But that's like a really cool thing that totally works, because a lot of that contemporary classical literature is like super angular and not necessarily sitting in one harmony. It moves around a lot, so you can get away with like going in and out of that. That's great. You've been playing wrong notes only for the history is deep.
And I didn't even know what was right or wrong. I was just like, man, I think I know how to play a bunch of this, stuff, so I might as well just play it in this setting. And it seemed like it was cool, and I was just a huge technique head, so anything that was fast and furious I was all about, so.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Super unique answer on that one. That's great. Yeah, next question. What is one thing you've been focusing on recently, like in the last month in your practice sessions? And you can get as specific as you want, but just curious, like what's your snapshot in time, like the last month or so?
Yeah, I've been really working on my time. I've been taking lessons with Billy Hart here up in New England Conservatory, and he has really been throwing my time for a loop. We play a lot of duo together, and it's been, he's always trying to mess around with how I feel things and never showing me where the downbeat is and all this pretty crazy stuff. So as well as my normal practicing of trying to transcribe every day a little bit, or tunes or whatever, I'm just really focusing on how can I internalize my time better. I tend to rush a little bit, so I'm really trying to feel like I'm coming back on things. But that, I would say, for the last month or so, that's really where my focus has been, is in time.
Like, what's a tune that you were practicing recently that you were like really paying attention to how you're feeling the beat?
A lot of it has been like playing tunes that are pretty open, because I don't know, when I have changes to play, I feel like my time is automatically better because I have landing points that are always, there. Like when I'm playing a tune like Donna Lee or something, I feel like my time's almost always more locked in because I'm always just focused on hitting changes. But when I'm playing like open tunes or tunes that have, vamps or whatever, I play a lot of like one up, one down with Billy in our lessons and stuff. We just play it for a long time. And so I'm just trying to figure out how to play phrases that I guess that swing a little bit harder, Mm-hmm. And for me, that means shorter phrases. I have a tendency to play a lot of run-on things. So I'm really trying to play like little 4-note shapes, separated by a couple beats, and then another 4-note shape or 6-note or whatever, but just kind of shorting them up a little bit and not rushing in between those. So if I play like a little, ba-ba-doo-be-up, ba-doo-be-up, ba-doo-be-up, ba-be-up, ba-doo-be-up, trying to almost feel like I'm dragging that, and, kind of letting the rhythm section play into those gaps a little bit more and stuff like that. And I feel like that, when I'm thinking about that, my time automatically locks in a little bit more. When I'm thinking about the space in between those shorter notes and having more of it and just feeling, I don't know, more relaxed maybe is another way. But yeah, I guess more specifically, that's what I've been working on.
And that's great. And you get to like practice that in real time with Billy Hart.
We played one, I think we played one up, one down the other day for like 20 minutes. I have it on recording. And it's just like, he takes a solo, I take a solo, we play together, we trade, like the whole thing. It's pretty wild. It's been really a wild ride for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. So leading into the next question, curious, like with listening, like who's the last person that you've listened to, or last, band or group or anything like that, and you just thought to yourself like, wow, this is amazing?
I guess somebody that two people I've been checking out maybe a little bit more recently than I haven't before is Noah Preminger. I've been listening to his stuff. I think because of what you sent me when we were touring together, I've been kind of checking out that era of him. Yeah. And Emmanuel Wilkins too. Actually, right before we resumed the Zoom call, I was listening to one of his things with Jonathan Blake and his trio, which I thought was really an interesting take on kind of the same style that I really enjoy, with the Coltrane and Steve Grossman kind of thing. And I've been also just listening to different eras of the same people that I enjoy, different eras of Grossman, kind of some of his maybe more bebop stuff I've been checking out, and trying to go back to the funk thing that I really like, and listening to some different sort of funk groups like Stone Alliance and other Brecker Brothers stuff. And I love listening to James Brown and things like that, but I haven't really been necessarily listening to one person in general. I've been kind of searching for something else, I guess, in a different way maybe than I had this summer when I was kind of just listening to the same sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know, just working on trying to find some new things in players that I haven't really checked out before, like Noah and that sort of style of tenor playing. Joe Lovano, just a different way of playing kind of the Coltrane intensity, but from a different... Wayne, I've been checking out some Wayne stuff. Berganzi's a huge Wayne fan, so I've been kind of checking out some of his things.
Yeah, those are all great. I guess to get more specific with the first couple names that you mentioned, do you remember what albums or recordings? Like, what's the Noah Preminger album you were listening to, or the Emmanuel Wilkins album? Because they definitely have a couple things out now.
Yeah, I actually, I'm a YouTube guy when it comes to listening. I really love listening to live performances in comparison to albums. I just feel like things are a little bit more experimental. I don't know. So there's a recording of Noah that I've been checking out of him at actually where we played this summer at Blue in Akron, Ohio.
Oh,
He's got a live. It's a cordless quartet with a trumpet player, bass drums, and him. And they play this blues up front that is really nice. And Noah's solo is really cool, the way he paces himself through it. And the trumpet player sounds great too. And then I was listening to Emmanuel Wilkins live at Chris's Jazz Cafe playing during the pandemic, actually, playing Firm Roots, I think it was, or Crying. It was a blues, or I think it was those two tracks, Firm Roots and Crying Blues. And he takes like these long solos of just like the intensity level, it just never goes below like 8, and it's always like in between those. So I was just kind of like listening to hear how he was making and creating intensity, which is so different than Train, or the way that Noah does it is completely different, but it's both things that I love. So I was trying to figure out like why and how are their intensity levels in their solo the same, but coming from a different angle.
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, there's definitely a huge difference between like a long-winded solo and what those guys are doing, because they're really telling a story, and you don't want the solo to end, as a listener, especially a lover of this style of music. I listened to that same Emmanuel Wilkins one on Firm Roots, and it was like 5.5 minutes long solo, and just amazing. It's interesting, we're all actively searching for things that are going to stimulate our imaginations a lot of times, and sometimes I go through periods where I don't hear anything like that, and I don't listen to a ton of music, but certainly these are great suggestions. So this is totally unrelated, and I think I know the answer to this question, but many of the people watching will not. So what is your current saxophone setup with regards to like reed strength, mouthpiece size, tip opening, saxophone serial number, all that stuff? So
I guess it's changed a little bit maybe since I last talked to you. I'm playing a Boston Sax Shop S series in a 9. I play a 4 strength reed now, with a Boston Sax Shop cut, with their ligature and everything. And I've been going back and forth with the Heritage neck and my Mark 6 neck. It kind of depends. The last maybe month and a half I've been playing the Heritage neck, and it's been cool. But sometimes there's things that I miss about the Mark 6 neck, and sometimes there's things that I miss about the Heritage thing. So kind of going back and forth with that. And then I'm playing Steve Grossman's Mark 6. 1969 Paris model Mark 6, I think, European model, and I've been playing that since March of last year, so try to keep that consistent. But that's my setup as of right now. I'm always super curious when they hear different players and you get their sounds and then you match it up with what that profile is. It's always interesting to hear. You playing on a 4 reed still kind of blows my mind. Yeah, I don't really know how it came to this, because I started playing 3s when did I move to Boston? 2021, like June. I was playing 3s on this thing. It was fine, and then all of a sudden, I guess I just started playing louder and louder, and I just wanted to have more pushback. I told Joe Fromm, because he was asking me, because I saw him in Nashville, and I was asking him. He's playing like the R series Boston Sax. He goes between the R and the E, he said. And then I was talking to him about this, and I said, I'm playing a 4, and he like didn't believe me. And then he was like, "Can you subtone on that?" And I was like, "Kinda, not really." He's like, "Oh, okay, well, hey, that's cool. It's like whatever you want to do." Yeah, it's interesting. What do you play? You on the E series still?
Yeah, I'm still using that same piece, and yeah, I'm still playing on strength 2 reeds. And I noticed like the more that I shed, like I can go up in a reed strength. Like if my chops are stronger, then I'll be able to play a harder reed. But yeah, still the same stuff.
Cool. Yeah, man.
Awesome, dude. So okay, so 2 more questions. So this is always an interesting one. Where was your most favorite gig that you've ever played? And it could be a couple gigs or series of gigs. And why does that one stand out in your memory? It could be the music you played, who you were playing for, who you were playing with, and what the songs were. A variety of different reasons, but what's the one of the first ones that comes to your mind as being like super memorable for you?
I was lucky enough in high school to play a lot of really cool like all state and all county band stuff, and those are big memories. Maybe not necessarily my favorite concert that I like ever played, but like really that like were memorable in my mind as to like I need to get my shit together because I'm not as good as the other people in the band, Like my freshman year of high school, I made all-state jazz on Barry sax. And Florida has a very good education system and it's super competitive. Pat Bartley is from the southern part of Florida, and he was in all those all-state bands and stuff. So there's guys like that are in high school that are like professional level players, and that was not me my freshman year at all. So I got my ass handed to me in that band, and it was for the first time in my entire life I was scared to take a solo, first time ever, because all these people were absolutely just playing like what I thought was like transcriptions, back then. Yeah. And I was very much not really knowing what I could do. I had a good sound, but I didn't really know what, chords were really that back then. So that moment, I remember going back home to Orlando and getting a private lesson teacher on tenor the next year, like really focusing in. He would come in and he would ask me, I made All-State that next year, my sophomore year, and he told me, he's like, okay, what do you think is your weakness? Like what is it that everybody's doing that you can't do? Like really kind of trying to compare myself to people my age. So those concerts are super memorable for that reason, because it really kicked me in gear. But I think, it's hard to pick out maybe one more than others than my last like 2 or 3 years, because all of them have been really cool. Traveling to Nashville for the first time when I played there at Rudy's was like my first time playing a gig out of town for an out of town audience, like and staying in a city and playing my own music with a bunch of my college buddies that we were, and we sold out our Saturday night show. That was one of my favorite memories, just to think that I could actually do that, was like a really big wake up call, and like, wow, this is like possible. This is like a dream that's coming true. So that's definitely a memorable one. And then, playing like the Coda Festival was really cool with you and the quintet, you know what I mean? Like, even though it was raining and stuff, like to still say that we played there, and the Deer Head Lounge, it's hard for me to pick one, but I guess those are just the ones that kind of stand out right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean the ones that I was lucky enough to be on, those were definitely up there for me as well. The Dakota Jazz Festival has such a rich history, so thinking of all the people that have been there before, and like Rudy's to have be your own gig and be sold out on top of that is, I mean, that's gigantic. So yeah, that all makes sense. Just curious, so when you were in the All-State bands, was Patrick Bartley a senior when you were a freshman?
No, we never crossed paths in high school. I think maybe he was like already at Lincoln Center or something when I was in All-State, or we just didn't, we weren't in the same band at the same time. I was in a band with Alex Ramirez, who's an alto player in New York. I don't know if you know that cat. I never crossed with Patrick. I knew about him from my friends. Everybody was like, you got to check this guy out from South Florida. And I was like, whoa, shit. And then I saw some of his videos and was like blown away, and playing with Winton, as like a senior in high school. It's like, geez, pretty crazy. That's
great, man. Yeah, those are definitely standout moments. I never got to be in like All-State anything actually in high school. I would keep track of the cats that were in it, because one of my friends was in it, and I remember those, even hearing, like we had tape recorders back then. That's how old I am. But hearing those recordings of those concerts was just always like, how are these high school kids? Like it would always sound that good. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it was crazy. There was this alto player that was in my All-State band my sophomore year, and he played trumpet and alto at like a insane level. And like the director of the band just like let him take like almost every solo on either trumpet or alto, because it was just so good. And I remember just sitting there like at the end of the line, like on Barry, like not knowing really what a 2-5-1 was,
Right.
And these guys are like playing these crazy. I was just like, why am I here? You know. But
Yeah.
it was a great experience, and I learned a ton from it. You know.
Great stuff, man. Yeah. Cool. So final question, and this is again, the path of questioning is jagged, but it's good to shift gears on this.
Yeah.
What other instruments do you play, and how do they help your saxophone playing?
I play a little bit of piano, you know, just like kind of just chords and stuff, and maybe like light solo stuff, but just mainly for teaching and for learning tunes, you know, I'll like bounce the chords out. I also play clarinet, bass clarinet. I play a little bit of flute. I wouldn't even consider it playing, but I can make a sound on flute. And I actually play oboe, which not a lot of people know. But yeah, when I was getting my undergrad, I went to like a 2-year school first before I went to a university, and I played oboe in that wind ensemble for like a year and a half. And I did the same thing like when I was in middle school, because my dad was like, well, you got to learn doubles if you want to work, because my dad's a really good doubler. And you know, he does a lot of pit orchestra stuff. So when I was in Florida, I did a little bit of that pit orchestra stuff. But I think honestly, clarinet and oboe and flute really help saxophone playing, because it makes the saxophone feel so much easier. You know what I mean? It feels like a superpower when you play saxophone. So I think there's that, and then also the air support part of flute and oboe, because a lot of back pressure when you're playing oboe, and a lot of same thing with flute, you know. So after I haven't played oboe in a little while, but after I play flute especially, I feel again like, you know, like the Hulk on saxophone, because everything's so much easier. And I also play flute etudes on saxophone. I know that's not really the same thing, but it's a good crossover because all the altissimo and range of the instrument, you know, works well on the saxophone. But
that's great. Yeah, those are oboes, a heavy double. I didn't even know that about you.
Yeah, I keep it as a secret.
Yeah, nice.
There's actually a smooth jazz oboe player that sounds almost exactly like Kenny G. And I need to look him up and find what his name is. But I listened to it for some reason like a couple years ago, and it legitimately sounds like a soprano saxophone.
Wow.
But it's an oboe, and you know, it's pretty wild.
That's an interesting parallel that I'm sure people have soprano to double for an oboe, but you don't think about it very often. But yeah, when those instruments are played well, they sound beautiful. So I can see that working out.
Like bassoon with that Paul Hansen guy. You know, he sounds like Michael Brecker on bassoon. It's like, what?
Write that down. I don't think I've heard of that guy either.
You've never heard of Paul Hansen? He played with Bella Fleck and the Flecktones for a little while. He plays an electric bassoon. So he has a bassoon that he like electrifies and puts pedals on it. And dude, he's done like Michael Brecker's solo on Invitation. He's got like all these pedal loops that he makes, and then he solos. It's like incredible stuff. It's insane.
Yeah. Nice. Man, well, Ryan, thank you so much, dude. This concludes this interview, and you gave some really great answers. So I hope everybody checking this out is able to find some stuff that they didn't think about before, because I don't know, every time I get to talk music with you, it's always a pleasure, man.
Oh yeah, ditto, Steve. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, bro.